What's the latest on the Israel-Hamas war? For the third time since the war began, the IDF has launched a major operation within the southern Gaza town of Han Yunis. In addition, the negotiating countries called upon Israel and Hamas to resume negotiations and finalize a deal, while the entire region is still bracing for Iran and Hezbollah's expected retaliation. I'm Alon Burstein. Let's dive into the latest on the Israel-Hamas war. On day 308 to the war, the highlights focus on the hostage situation, the ongoing fighting in the Gaza Strip, and the regional escalations. In the hostage situation, in light of the de facto stalemate in the negotiations, on August 8th, a joint statement was issued by the negotiating countries, i.e. the United States, Qatar, and Egypt. The parties called upon Israel and Hamas to both accept a deal, stating that a framework has been worked out already and is on the table, and all that is missing is for the sides to work out the details and initiate the actual process. The statement called upon Israel and Hamas to resume negotiations in a meeting that would start on August 15th, either in Qatar or in Egypt, to complete the negotiations and begin implementing the deal. In Israel, the Israeli Prime Minister's office responded, confirming that Israel will in fact send a delegation on August 15th to wherever is designated, i.e. wherever it's decided, either Qatar or Egypt, and this in order to finalize the deal framework. Hamas did not respond to the call of the negotiators. Right now, Israel has agreed to that meeting to discuss a framework on August 15th. Unclear if that will take place, and if so, where. Israel's response caused political turmoil in the country, with the most vocal criticism coming from the Israeli finance minister and head of the religious Zionism party, Bezalel Smotrich. On August 9th, Smotrich issued a statement stating that any such deal would equate defeat for Israel and victory for Hamas, adding, and I quote, "Now is not the time for the dangerous trap wherein the negotiators are dictating the formula and imposing upon us surrendering deal." In turn, the U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby attacked Smotrich's statements, stating that such statements endanger the lives of the hostages and Israeli national security interests. John Kirby added that, quote, "Smotrich is suggesting that the war should continue indefinitely without limitation or any reason, and that the lives of the hostages are not really of concern." Other news related to the hostage situation. On August 9th, Sky News in Arabic reported that Hamas has been demanding the release of Marwan Barghouti. He is a Fatah leader and the head of the Tanzim organization, that is one of the militant groups within Fatah, who has been in Israeli jails for over 20 years. According to the report, Hamas is demanding his release already in the first phase of the deal. It's important to note that Barghouti is known as the quote-unquote heaviest Palestinian prisoner. He's not only extremely popular within the Palestinian street, he's also viewed within Israel as one of the main architects of the Second Intifada between 2000 and roughly 2004. The report included the speculation that Hamas may be recognizing that Barghouti would be a more comfortable ally to possibly take over the Gaza Strip if the movement does not manage to hold on to a government, i.e. Hamas wants to secure the release of Barghouti in order to make sure that he's their ally if and when he does come to a leadership position. In a moment of analysis, I'll add that this may be associated, or may be the underlying reason, for the new demand that I stated in my last summary that was raised within Israel, wherein Prime Minister Netanyahu was saying that he is going to demand in the negotiations that any heavy prisoner, quote-unquote, that is released from Israeli jails be deported from the region. So it may be that because Barghouti is extremely popular within the Palestinian population, Israel may fear that if he is released in the first stage of the deal, he will be able to unite the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Again, that's speculation at this point. However, that may be the underlying reason why all of a sudden Israel is demanding that the heaviest prisoners who are released in any such deal be deported from the region. Moving on to the highlights from the Gaza Strip. There were continuous rockets and mortars that were fired from the Gaza Strip in the last several days. This is important to note because this is actually a relatively new development. In the months of April till June, there was a lot less rocket fire coming from the Gaza Strip. We've seen a resurgence of rocket fire in the last several months. Specifically, in the last several days, there was rockets that targeted the areas of Kisufim, Ein HaShlosha. Rockets also targeted the areas of Sufa near and there were also rockets sent to a lot of other areas in the areas surrounding the Gaza Strip. Some highlights from the fighting within the Gaza Strip. In the northern parts of the Gaza Strip on August 8th, there were two major airstrikes that were reported in the Sajaiya region, targeting two schools in that northern neighborhood in the Gaza Strip. The IDF reported that the schools were being used by Hamas as a local headquarters, while in turn Palestinian sources reported that they were housing internally displaced Palestinians, adding that 15 Palestinians were killed and 30 were injured in those attacks. In addition, right before recording this, there were some reports that were emerging about fighting that was beginning in the Jabalia refugee camp, also in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. Several airstrikes were reported. We'll learn more in the coming days if this is a new IDF operation there or if these are just airstrikes as part of the ongoing fighting. In the central parts of the Gaza Strip, on August 9th, the IDF reported that it managed to detonate one of the more expansive tunnels that were located in the Gaza Strip thus far. According to reports, this tunnel was over 3 kilometers long, included several different levels, and had in it rooms designed for long hideouts, weapon storages, and other military equipment. According to reports, this is one of the largest tunnels in the area and was destroyed. In the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, the biggest development of the last several days is the IDF launching a brigade-wide operation in the southern town of Khan Yunis. The IDF has been gradually calling upon Palestinian civilians who had returned to the city since the IDF pulled out of the area at the beginning of April to evacuate to humanitarian zones. This happened already 3 weeks ago when the IDF started to push Palestinians out of the different areas, stating these are now defined as war zones. However, then the IDF surprisingly pulled out of the region while everyone expected the operation to expand. Now, all of a sudden, today, the IDF called upon Palestinians within the Abbasan region and the Hirbat Khuza'ah region, these are the regions in the northeast centers of Khan Yunis, to evacuate to the humanitarian zones, and the IDF has announced a major brigade-wide operation that is going to be launched in the area. This means we'll likely see very intensive fighting in the areas of Khan Yunis in the coming days or possibly weeks. In addition, the Al-Qassam brigades reported in the last several days ongoing fighting in the Tel Sultan region of Rafah, publishing video footage of IDF tanks that were detonated as a result of explosives that the Al-Qassam brigades detonated in the region. The IDF did not report specifically about those battles, but did say there's ongoing fighting in the Tel Sultan region. And one final note on the Gaza Strip regarding casualties. The IDF is reporting that 329 IDF soldiers have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began, and 2,199 IDF soldiers have been injured in the Gaza Strip, all since the invasion began in late October. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that 39,699 Palestinians have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began, and 91,722 Palestinians have been injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. I remind everyone the reports of the Palestinian Health Ministry include both militants and civilians. They do not distinguish between the two. Those are reports of the total number of Palestinians who have been killed. Other news relating to Hamas in the Gaza Strip in the last several days, Yahya Sinwar is continuously solidifying his leadership. After he was promoted to be the leader of the Hamas movement following the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the Al-Qassam brigades issued a statement in the last several days confirming their support for the appointment of Yahya Sinwar as the new Hamas leader. Al-Qassam spokesperson Abu Ubaidah stated that the military wing of Hamas is, quote, willing and prepared to implement any orders issued by Yahya Sinwar, adding that his election is an example of the movement's unity and strength. With this, Sinwar has completely solidified his now hold on the movement, as he's now been appointed the political leader of Hamas. However, the military wing has also pledged allegiance to his leadership. In addition to this, there was another interesting report about the new Hamas leadership in the last several days. On August 8th, Al-Mayadin reported that contrary to previous statements, which said that Khalil al-Hayya has been appointed as Yahya Sinwar's deputy, according to the Al-Mayadin report, the position has not yet been assigned. According to the report, Khalil al-Hayya is among the candidates, alongside Khalid Mashal and Musa Abu Marzouk, all of whom are being considered to be Sinwar's deputy. While this may seem as a minor point, this decision may prove very important for at least two reasons. First, Khalid Mashal and Musa Abu Marzouk are currently the most dominant figures in Hamas's external leadership following the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, while Khalil al-Hayya, despite the fact that he's outside the Gaza Strip, is strongly affiliated with the internal leadership. He actually only left the Gaza Strip days before the launching of the October 7th attack. Thus, the decision may shed light on the trajectory that Sinwar is planning for the way Hamas is going to be reformulated after Haniyeh's assassination. Is he going to take as a deputy one of the external leaders, i.e. signaling that he still sees respect in the external leadership and wants one of them to be his deputy? Or is he going to favor Khalil al-Hayya and shift the entire weight of the leadership into the internal section of Hamas, effectively nullifying the job of the external leadership? In addition, it's also important to remember that Sinwar is currently the most wanted man by the IDF, the Shabak, and the Mossad, and should he be killed, his deputy would automatically assume control of the movement. The only reason this didn't happen after Ismail Haniyeh was killed was that his deputy, Salah al-Aruri, had already been assassinated in January. Thus, while it may seem as not a big deal, the selection of his deputy, it actually may prove crucial to understanding the trajectory of the war and how things are going to develop in the coming months. Moving on to the other main front of the war, the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, and these are also these days highly associated with possible regional escalations and opening new fronts in the war. There's continuous escalations and flare-ups between the IDF and Hezbollah, as there have been since the war began, all of which are somewhat overshadowed by the region bracing for the expected Hezbollah and Iranian retaliation for the assassinations that were carried out by Israel last week, one in Beirut targeting the chief of staff of Hezbollah, Fuad Shukr, and one in Tehran, which Israel never claimed responsibility for, but it's pretty obvious that Israel carried it out, the assassination of Hamas's leader, Ismail Haniyeh. There were continuous barrages of rockets and missiles fired by Hezbollah, targeting a wide range of towns in the northern parts of Israel. Fires broke out in the areas of Kiryat Shmona, Tel Chai. There were also rockets fired towards Kfar Giladi, Kfar Yuval, and a slew of others throughout northern Israel. In addition, there were continuous IDF attacks that are continuously targeting Hezbollah rocket launching sites and Hezbollah infrastructure and military sites throughout southern Lebanon. Some examples coming from Ita Sha'am, Marhaba, Meihav, Kila village, Misr Jabil. Major fires reported in some of these areas as well. All this is part of the ongoing escalation between the sides. One specific noteworthy event that occurred in the last several days is the assassination of Samer al-Hajj, the Hamas commander in the area of Sidon, who was assassinated in an IDF airstrike. 2 more people were reportedly injured in that attack. The IDF put out a statement stating that al-Hajj was Hamas's military commander in the areas of Sidon and Ein el-Halawa, and that he was responsible for rocket launching and recruitment in the area. Other news of the last several days related to the expected regional escalation. The commander of the U.S. Central Command, General Michael Kurilla, visited Israel yesterday for the second time this week. He met with the Israeli Chief of Staff and discussed regional preparations for the Iranian retaliation. It's important to note this also comes a day after the U.S. Central Command tweeted that new F-22 Raptors have arrived in the region in order to bolster the U.S. redeployment in the Middle East as part of the attempt to contain regional escalation. It was also reported in the last several days in several different news outlets that the United States has sent messages to Iran stating that an escalation that targets Israeli civilians is going to be met with a very harsh response that may decimate Iran's economy and possibly Iran's government. In addition to that, on August 8th, there were reports of a substantial attack that took place near the military airport in Homs in Syria. The Saudi Al-Hadath reported that the target was a weapons warehouse in the region, and the Syrian Voice of the Capital Radio, which is affiliated with Syrian opposition, republished a report from last October stating that this is an airport that is used by Iran in order to smuggle weapons to affiliated militias in the region. So it is possible this is the idea of trying to carry out a preemptive strike against Iran, preparing for its retaliation that may also come from Syria. In addition to this, on August 8th, the leader of the Houthis, Abdel Malik al-Houthi in Yemen, implied that the Houthis may participate in the retaliation that Iran is preparing. Referencing the IDF attack in the port of Hodeidah that took place last month, al-Houthi stated that the Houthis are still planning a retaliation for that attack, and that the different pro-Iranian allies have coordinated their activities against Israel, i.e. is implying that it is possible that this retaliation may also involve an attack from Yemen. Remains to be seen. In addition to this, on August 9th, the Telegraph reported that there is disagreement within the Iranian leadership with regards to the nature of the retaliation. The military leadership in Iran and the Iranian Revolutionary Guards are interested in launching an attack that would target Tel Aviv itself. This is possibly inspired by the Houthi suicide drone that managed to detonate the heart of Tel Aviv when the Houthis carried out that attack. According to the Telegraph, however, Iran's newly elected president is instead pressuring to attack Israeli secret bases in neighboring countries, i.e. attack Israeli-affiliated targets but not carry out an attack against Israel itself, likely trying to avoid a harsh Israeli or U.S. retaliation as he's trying to stabilize Iran's economy and solidify his new position. Already when Iran announced that it was going to carry out the retaliation, there were some who suggested that the Iranian president will try to mitigate this in order to not let that retaliation escalate and therefore endanger his new presidency. So that is according to at least this report, some of the infighting going on within the Iranian leadership. With regards to this current quote-unquote waiting period and what is going on, I want to remind everyone of 2 reports from the last several days that may help understand what Iran is quote-unquote waiting for. One was a statement made by Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah, who stated in a speech that putting all of Israel on high alert is part of the psychological warfare, i.e. Nasrallah is saying the fact that everyone in Israel is waiting for this retaliation is part of the strategy of the retaliation, i.e. to make Israelis be scared of the upcoming retaliation. Another was an estimate that was given stating that Iran may be waiting to carry out its retaliation symbolically on the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, that is the Jewish day of mourning the destruction of the Second Temple. It is going to fall this year on the upcoming Monday, Tuesday of next week. Possibly Iran wants to carry out a symbolic attack then. I remind everyone that the October 7th attack was launched on one of the Jewish high holidays and on a Saturday, so carrying out attacks on symbolic days of Jewish holidays is something that different organizations have done in the past. Possibly that is part of the reason why we're in this quote-unquote waiting period. Remains to be seen. Again, the biggest highlights from the last several days is the negotiating countries issuing a call to the Hamas and Israel to reinstate negotiations, and Israel saying that it is willing to do so. Remains to be seen what happens with Hamas. The major operation that the IDF has launched in Han Yunis remains to be seen if the IDF has some intelligence with regards to hostages or what exactly is being planned there at this time. And the region bracing for Iran's retaliation. What is going to happen, how it is going to develop, and is this going to escalate into opening other fronts and possibly a full-scale regional war. Those are my highlights from the last several days. I'm Alon Burstein. I'm a visiting assistant professor and Israel Institute fellow at Tufts University. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.